Hello, everybody! My name's Anastasia Zielinski, and I am the human behind freaking art. Today, we're going to do a little class to talk about form and art. Before we start, I'm just going to plug myself. If you can, please donate. My Venmo is at Anastasia Zielinski, and my PayPal is tasha8@hotmail.com. Your donations help support me and help me bring this education to you. Okay, so form in art is the idea of transforming shapes into 3 dimensions. So just think if you took an air pump to your circle or your square, filled it full of air, and that would create a form. So, for example, your circle would turn into a sphere, your square would turn into a cube, your rectangle turns into a rectangular prism, and your triangle turns into a pyramid or a cone. So that's what happens when you turn your shapes into a 3 dimension. Just to illustrate that a little bit more, sphere for your circle, this tennis ball, got this cone for your triangle, a cube for your square, and a rectangular prism for your rectangle. Okay. So just like shapes, with forms, there's geometric forms, like the ones we just talked about, the circle, the square, the rectangle. And then there's, the geometric forms are precise and regular, and we can find them in life, in man-made objects like I just showed you, the yoga block, the tennis ball, or buildings. Then there's also, like shapes, there's organic forms, what we call them biomorphic forms, which really translates to life form. And these are things that you find in life, like outside in nature, things that grow and flow, and they're not going to have a regular or precise shape per se. Like a rock would be a good example of a biomorphic form, or a shell, or some coral. Now, in art, the most obvious example of form is going to be sculpture. Like I have this little lion sculpture, so you can see this is existing in the 3D. So our shapes, when we have our shapes, they're going to have a length and a width, but there's no depth. And so when you get your form, you're adding the volume, you're adding the addition of depth. So that's a difference between shape and form. Is the shape is flat and it's just length and width, and the form is length, width, and depth. So that's the volume. You can see it from multiple different sides, not just on a flat surface. Now, even sculptures that look flat, like this is pretty shallow depth, this is still a 3-dimensional form, even though it's flat. I mean, our paper is still 3-dimensional, even though it's flat. So, like I said, the most obvious example in art is with sculpture, how to see form. But I wanted to show you how we can create this illusion of form and depth in our 2-dimensional surfaces, like our drawings and our paintings. If I was hanging out with you, I'd probably get some clay, and we'd talk about form and make some pots or balls, and then we'd make real forms. But since I'm not hanging out with you, and I hope everybody has access to a pen or a pencil and a piece of paper. This is a way that we can create form within our two-dimensional surface. So today we're going to use a piece of paper, a ruler. If you don't have a ruler, you can use the edge of a book or something straight. And then some pencils. And if you don't have a pen, an eraser. And if you don't have that, you can always use a pen and either a darker pen or a marker. But we're going to want to be able to make some light lines and dark lines. Okay. So, how we create this illusion, how we're tricking people's mind to create this idea of depth and form within a flat surface, we have a couple different tools, and we've talked about these a little bit over the last couple of weeks. So one way we can do it is with value. So like last week we talked about value, and you could say I took the circle and just by using darks, shadows, light, the highlight, and some grays in between really created this illusion, this magic trick of creating a sense of form, this sphere, on this flat surface. We can also use contrast. So having a really high light and a really low, a really dark right next to each other, that's going to create depth. And we'll look at that in some of our artist examples. You can use color. So again, using bright or deep colors next to muted or light colors will create the sense of depth. And we can also use our line, which we talked about. So with line, we can do the cross contour, which is literally describing the surface of an object with the lines. So that's how we're creating this illusion of form with line. Or also, like when we learned about lines and we did our gestural drawing where we built up all those marks to create lights and darks. So we were using our line and our value when we did our self-portrait with our gesture drawing to create this illusion of form. So today, okay, and then the last way that we as artists can create this illusion of form in a two-dimensional space is through perspective. That's a pretty big word, but it was developed during the Renaissance as a way to create depth within a two-dimensional space and create the idea of, you see it a lot in buildings and streets. So today we're going to learn about perspective, this simple one-point perspective to create a little house. We're going to do a little landscape. Our dream house here, our dream tiny house. We're going to make our square and our triangle have depth to them so they look like they create form. And we're doing that simply with one-point perspective. Okay. So remember, helpful to have a paper, pencil, pens, an eraser, straight edge, a ruler, or something straight, possibly a circle if you want. So first, we'll look at some artists. We looked at this artist last week, Banksy, but this is a really, unfortunately I don't have the library at my disposal right now because it's closed. Else I would show you some other graffiti artists because you see this idea of creating form through contrast a lot with graffiti art. Even if you walk around your streets, maybe you'll see somebody wrote their letters and they made it look like they're popping out of the wall. Or you see here, Banksy is using this high contrast value. He's added the black and the white to this gray wall, and just that high contrast is creating this illusion of depth. It looks like this lady's peeling up a curtain to put the dirt under there. So that's Banksy, the anonymous artist from the UK, using contrast to create form. Okay. Next, I'm going to show you This is a French artist, André Derain. And you can see he's using color to create this illusion of depth and give his shapes a sense of three-dimensionality. So he's using these muted, lighter colors in the background, and they really recede back. And then these brighter, deeper colors really pop forward. So he's creating this illusion of depth and form just by his choice of colors. Okay. Next, we're going to look at very famous artist and Ninja Turtle, Raphael. So this is a Renaissance artist. So this is where, what I was talking about when perspective was invented. And it's a way of drawing to create the illusion of form. And you see it mostly in, I would say, buildings, drawings of buildings. So you can see, just by the way he's drawing his shapes, it all looks like it's receding back. I mean, he's also using the values, so it's darker in the front and a little bit lighter in the background to help create and reinforce that sense of depth and form. And then, so this is Raphael's an Italian Renaissance artist. And then we have Velázquez, who's a Spanish artist. And you can see here, he's really using the idea of value and contrast. So it's very dark in the back, and then the figures in the front are lighter to create this depth. And then lastly, we're going to look at Salvador DalÍ. This is my husband Tyler's favorite artist. So here you can see he's employing the value, so it's very dark, and the color to create the sense of form. And he has what I would call biomorphic form here. And through his use of line and value, the lights and the darks, as well as the color, it's creating a sense of space. And this shape right here really looks like something you could grab. And then lastly, just another example of DalÍ. Here DalÍ's using that tool of perspective to create form within these squares. There's a nice form. It looks like a cube because of the way he's drawing it, and also his use of color again. So we've got these lighter muted colors, and then these darker colors in the front, and value. So we've got the dark, the shadow, and the light here. So it really looks, even though this is a flat two-dimensional surface, it's really looking like these objects are popping out. They have real good form. Okay. So looking at those drawings, it might seem really intimidating to try to draw in perspective. But we're going to try to make it as simple as possible. I'm not saying it's not going to be challenging, but we're going to just try to break it down so it's as simple as possible, and you can tell everybody that you know how to draw in perspective. So first, let's get our piece of paper here. I'm going to go ahead and tape it down so it doesn't move so much. And remember, if you don't have a pencil and eraser, that's okay. You can just use a pen and a marker, or two different colored pens so you can tell the difference. So first we're going to take our straight edge, and if you have a pencil, just use your light pencil, and we're going to draw a line straight across our page. Now you can choose to have your paper be horizontal or vertical. horizontal because I like how you can see the roof in perspective. And that one's a little bit more tricky. So we're starting with our horizon line. So that's a line where the land meets the sky. And we're going to just put it, just try not to put it in the middle. Just because that's a little bit boring. So I'm going to put it a little bit below the middle here. And just do one line straight across. Ah! Okay, that's a wobbly line. We're going to make it straight across. Okay. Take my eraser. Now really, you don't need to erase everything. Okay, I think I have to use a darker pencil so you guys can see this better. You don't need to erase everything as you go. It's just to help you from being confused. If you don't erase it, it will just kind of look like your building's made of glass. Okay, so I have my horizon line. Next, I'm going to put a dot somewhere on this line. I'm going to go just a little bit to the side here and make it big enough that you can see it. Okay. Next, we're going to draw our square. Now, don't worry about the square being perfect. We'll go over it with a ruler or a straight edge in a second here. So, draw my square here. And let's go. So it's a wibbly wobbly square as you see, but I'm going to go over it in a second. And then, so here's my square, and on top of the square I'm going to put a triangle. And you just want the edges of the triangle to match up with the edges of the square. Now where all these corners are, I'm going to put a dot. And this is just to help me make my perspective lines. So I'm doing a dot at the top of the triangle, and a dot at the corner of the triangle and the top corners of the square, and then a dot at both of the bottom. So right now we have our horizon line, our perspective point, which is our dot on that line, our wobbly square and triangle with dots on each of the corners. So now I'm going to take my ruler and I'm just going to go over my square and connect the dots so they're a straight line instead of a wobbly line, and a little bit darker so you can see them. So just do that real quick here. Now you can use your ruler if you have one to make a perfect square and measure it out. But we're going to do this really quick, so it's not going to be perfect, but it's going to be good enough. Oh my goodness, do you know what I forgot? I forgot our exercise. Okay, everybody, while we're doing this, because this is a little bit challenging, let's just go ahead, and before we get frustrated, we'll take one deep breath. Okay, one more time. Okay, I feel better already. Okay. So now, I've got a really nice square and triangle, and they're dark, so you can see them. And I'm going to go back and erase the horizon line that's coming through my house because I don't want my house to be made of glass. So I'll just kind of erase the wobbly lines a little bit. Now again, if you don't have an eraser and a pencil, you can just be using a marker and going over that line so it's darker and you can see it better. Okay. So the first thing we're going to do is turn our square into our house. So you're going to go from the point of the top corner of your house to your perspective point on the horizon. Now we're going to use a light mark with our pencil here, and we'll just draw the whole thing in. See? And then we'll do the bottom one, the same with the bottom one. We're going to take that bottom corner to that perspective point and draw a line. Now, I could leave it like this and it would look like my house was super long and it went on forever. I don't want my house to go on forever because that's a lot to clean. Who wants to vacuum that? Not me. So, the next thing I'm going to do is choose a point to cut off the house. So, I want my house to be about that long. And just try to keep this line that you're making parallel to this line. So again, you can put it anywhere in here. So you could have a real shallow house or a real deep house. I'm just going to cut it off right about here. Okay. Next, I'm going to erase my horizon line in my wall here. And then erase the guidelines that are on the opposite side of my house here. So in between my wall and the perspective point, I'm erasing these lines. Okay. So now it looks like I could actually go inside my house, but it doesn't look like I have a roof. It just looks like I have a triangle. So next we're going to put on our roof. So we're going to take that top point here, the top of our triangle, and we're going to connect the dot to our perspective point. Okay, so I'm going to do my light line with my pencil. Okay, so we got a light. Well, it's really light for you guys. So do it with the darker pencil. Okay. So again, we have that line that goes all the way to the horizon, but now our roof doesn't match up with our house. So how we're going to fix this is we're going to put our ruler right here at the end of the back of the house, and we'll put it at an angle so again it's parallel to this line right here, this line of our triangle, so that line of our house. So we're going from the top of the wall, and then we're going to make a parallel line so it looks like our roof. So we're just making it, try to make it match. Okay. Now it looks like my roof matches my house. So I'm going to go back and I'm going to erase my guidelines. Okay. So now I have a house. It looks like it's in the middle of nowhere though. It doesn't look like it's in a real space. So I'm going to put in a couple extra things. I'll do a little road here. So I want my road to probably come to this corner, so I have a nice diagonal line coming in. And then I want them to have a nice bit of yard in between their house and the road, so I'll do another line right here. Now, it looks like I have a house next to a road. And as you can see, we're still using this point as our reference. So any line that's coming out of it's going to go to here. So it looks like, because this is getting wider as it comes up front, it looks like it's closer to us. Now, real quick, I'll just show you how you can put in a window if you want to put a window on the side of your house. If you draw anything on the front, it's just going to be a flat shape. So like if you wanted a door, it would just be a rectangle. If you wanted a window above your door, you could just do a circle. Okay, but if you want to put a window on the side of your house, you would start by doing a little line wherever you want your window, and then if you want, you can put a dot on each end of it to help you. And then you're going to use your straight edge or your ruler. And since we know the window's only going to be on the house, we're going to stop it before it hits this back line of the house. So we'll just do a little line. And a little line. And then we'll connect the two. And now it looks like I have a low window on the side of my house. Okay, so that's just a quick example of how we can use the tool of perspective to create this illusion of depth and form within our piece. So your first challenge would be to finish your drawing. Like I said, you could add whatever you want. We just have geometric forms right now, so I'm going to add some biomorphic or organic forms by adding some clouds. Look at those. They look happy. And still kind of looks like the middle of nowhere, so maybe I'll add a little mountain range. And just remember to keep that line light because it's further away. And if you have a circle, you could always add a sun setting. So I'm just tracing half of my circle right there. So just in a couple minutes, I went from having a completely flat piece of paper with just some shapes on it to, by just using my line and this tool of perspective, to having some forms and a sense of depth. Okay, so our first challenge is to finish our perspective landscape. I know you guys can do this. It's a challenge, but I know you can do it. And then you can think about going on a treasure hunt and seeing what forms you can find in your house that look like shapes that have been blown up with an air pump. Like, can you find a ball? It's a circle turned into a sphere. Can you find a rectangle turned into a rectangular prism? Could you find a square turned into a cube? Or can you find a triangle that looks like a pyramid or a sphere? And then, if you remember, our challenge from last week was learning to use our value to make form. So you could practice that again. Okay. So that's our lesson today. Just a little bit quick lesson on form and how we can use the tool of perspective to create form in our work when we don't have any other tools. Like if we just have a pen or a pencil, you can just use that and create the sense of depth and form within your work. So if you have the ability, please donate. Venmo is at AnastasiaZielinski.com and PayPal is Tasha8@hotmail.com. Your support really helps me produce these programs and provide free art education for people who can't afford it. And thank you guys again for joining me, and I hope you have a beautiful weekend. Thank you for making art with me, and if you have any questions, if that was like a lot to take in, you can feel free to message me, okay? Okay, bye guys, have a great weekend. I'll see you next week.